Look, I don't know if I'm getting Blake Corum on my fantasy team or not next year. All I know is that regardless, I'm naming my team A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Corum. There's absolutely nothing you can do about that. I'm taking that name. I'm reserving that right. Welcome everybody to JG9 News, where we talk all things NFL all the time. I'm Jared Gare, and I'm representing the 904 from the 602. And today, we are talking about this team behind me right here, the Los Angeles Chargers, scheduling some visits with prospects as we get closer and closer to the NFL draft taking place in about a month, because they have a visit lined up with Michigan running back Blake Corum. So the Chargers have a top 30 visit scheduled with him. A top 30 visit, for those who don't know, it's not really top 30. Top 30 visit implies that it's the top 30 players on your board. That's not what it is. It's just that each team gets 30 visits with players where they come to the facility and they meet with them one-on-one privately. That's what top 30 visit means. And the Chargers are using one of them on the Michigan man, Blake Corum. And don't just take my word for it. Don't take a random reporter's word for it. Take Blake Corum himself, who went on the Rich Eisen show. Rich Eisen, also a Michigan man. And he basically said that he was visiting the Chargers and they were showing a lot of interest in him. Take a listen.
Have you visited personally with any teams yet at their facilities?
Not at their facility. I have one coming up, and then you have some local days that you might hit.
Sure.
But,
who do you have coming up? Where are you going?
I'm going to L.A.
Los Angeles, as in the Chargers. Is what you're saying?
Chargers.
Who do you know? Who do you know there? Do you know somebody there? Blake?
I think I might know someone there. I'm excited to go out. Talk to Coach Harbaugh, talk to the new staff that I don't already know, and see what it's like out there. But
now, obviously, I don't know how Blake Corum is going to play with Jim Harbaugh as his head coach. I'm not sure the two of them can get along. I mean, obviously, Blake Corum and Jim Harbaugh, very, very close ties, considering the fact that Harbaugh coached the man at Michigan for the last few years. Harbaugh had nothing but praise on Corum, saying on him after the championship, there wasn't one person who didn't have something great to say about Blake Corum during the recruiting process. Everybody he came in contact with, teachers at the school, you can go back to the grade school coaches, everybody loved him. And get to see it for your own eyes, man, they don't come any better. This is as good as they come. So Harbaugh obviously loved Corum in college. Does that mean he's going to take him in the NFL and make him a member of the Los Angeles Chargers? For those who don't know about Blake Corum, he finished his college career at Michigan with 3,737 rushing yards and 58 rushing touchdowns. Maybe the best running back in Michigan history. Last season, 1,245 yards, 27 touchdowns, top 10 in Heisman voting. Big reason why Michigan won the national championship last year. And in 2022, similar numbers, 1,463 yards, 18 touchdowns, once again top 10 in the Heisman voting, and a consensus All-American. He led the NCAA in touchdowns and rushing touchdowns last season. He's 4th all-time in Big Ten history in rushing touchdowns, 15th all-time in NCAA history in that category, and he was nothing but consistently productive at Michigan. 3 straight seasons with 1,000-plus yards from scrimmage and double-digit touchdowns. He's projected by many experts to go in the 3rd round of the NFL draft. He will definitely get drafted. The question is where. I've seen anywhere as high as round 2. I've seen round 4. It seems like round 3 seems to be the sweet spot for where he could go. And the Chargers do have a 2nd-round pick, and they have a 3rd-round pick number 69. And the Chargers are obviously interested in Corum, not just because of the Harbaugh connection, but because they need running back help badly. Now, keep in mind, Jim Harbaugh, before he was the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers from 2011 to 14, he was the head coach at Stanford. He did not draft a single Stanford player in 4 years with the team. Now, he wasn't the GM. Trent Baalke was the GM. But Harbaugh did not get a single Stanford player in the draft. So just because Corum played at Michigan doesn't mean that Harbaugh will automatically draft him. Doesn't mean he's just going to stack him on Michigan guys this draft and guys he recruited and whatnot. But it does make sense for Blake Corum to be a Charger because their depth chart at running back is extremely thin. Obviously, they got Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards, they got him from the Baltimore Ravens, 810 yards, 13 touchdowns, very, very strong season in Baltimore. He played a big part of that offense and why they got the number 1 seed in the AFC, made it to the AFC Championship. The problem with Edwards is that he never had 200-plus carries in a season. History shows he will not be able to play every down, especially on the older side of things at 29. Even last season, Edwards only got 36% of the carries with the team. That is not a lot. For some perspective, Austin Eckler with the Chargers last season, not very good, not good at all, actually. He went to the Commanders in free agency. He got 42% of the carries with the Chargers last year, and he missed 3 games. Eckler actually got a higher percentage of carries than Edwards did. Travis Etienne, for some perspective, as a Jaguar, 59% of the carries that Jacksonville had last season were done by Travis Etienne. So Gus Edwards, 36% of the carries. He's a very good running back, don't get me wrong, but this is basically a long way of saying that he will not be able to run the ball on every down. You're going to have to rotate him in and out, and they have no one else besides Gus Edwards. You have Elijah Dodson, 4 carries, 6 yards last season. He was waived. He was brought back on a reserve contract. He probably will not factor into the future plans. Jared Patterson, he was not on any 53-man roster last year. He was released by the Chargers last year, then went to the Commanders, didn't do anything there. Now he's back on a reserve contract. So that's 2 running backs on a reserve futures contract. Probably don't factor in the slightest bit. And then you have Isaiah Spiller, who is abysmal. That's really the only way to put it. He's abysmal. 2 seasons with the Chargers after being drafted in the 4th round in 2022. 2.5 yards per carry. That is it. 137 rushing yards. No touchdowns. There's never been any explosion from Spiller whatsoever. For some perspective, here's a chart showing you every running back, so not quarterbacks, not wide receivers, not anyone like that, just running backs. Every running back over the last 2 seasons with 50 or more carries. There have been 93 running backs in that stretch with at least 50-plus carries. Spiller ranks 92nd in yards per carry, only ahead of Keontae Ingram, who was the Cardinals running back, and now he is no longer with the team because he was not very good with them. Isaiah Spiller, second to last in yards per carry amongst all running backs of the last 2 seasons with 50-plus carries. The average is somewhere around 4. He's doing about 2.5. So right now, your running backs, if you're the Chargers, Gus Edwards, and then a guy averaging 2.5 yards per carry, and 2 running backs on futures contracts that will not factor into the team whatsoever. So they're definitely drafting a running back. Maybe even 2, because you're going into the season with at least 3 running backs. Every team does that. Some teams keep 4. Every team keeps at least 3. You might draft 2 running backs, because I'm not sure there's anyone outside of Gus Edwards on this roster that is a lock to make it in the slightest fit. You also have to remember that Jim Harbaugh, when he was in San Francisco in his 4 seasons there, the Niners drafted a running back all 4 seasons. I wonder how much Harbaugh had to do with that, how much input he had on that. They drafted Kendall Hunter in 2011, LaMichael James in 2012, Marcus Lattimore in 2013, and Carlos Hyde in 2014. And all 4 of those guys were taken in the first 4 rounds, so they were taken relatively early. The Chargers do have some needs, but based on Harbaugh's history in San Francisco, based on the major need the Chargers have at running back, and based on this visit with Blake Corum, based on the connection there is a very good chance that not only will the Chargers draft Corum because they're showing interest in him, but that they will draft a running back. If they can't get Corum, they'll draft a guy very early on, probably before the start of day 3, no later than day 4, and again, they could take 2 because outside of Gus Edwards, there is a massive hole at that running back position. So, Blake Corum, definitely that Michigan connection with Harbaugh, makes a lot of sense for him to be a Charger in that regard, and we'll just have to wait and see where Corum winds up. We know for a fact he's going to get drafted. The question is where, and the question is when. But it looks like the Chargers have a ton of interest in the guy, and it makes a lot of sense considering the positional need, considering the connections, and considering everything that we know about Corum and Harbaugh and that team. But what are your thoughts on Blake Corum in the NFL? Do you want your team to draft him? Where do you think he's going to wind up round-wise? Where do you think he's going to wind up in terms of the team? Do you think the Chargers will take him? Do you think the Chargers take a running back? And if so, how early on? How big of a need is running back for the Chargers outside of Gus Edwards? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And what do you think Blake Corum is going to do in the NFL? What do you think his ceiling is, his floor? Let me know all of that down below. That's going to do it for this episode of JG9 News. Be sure you like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out my main channel, JaguarGary9, where we talk all things NFL history all the time. Until next time, this is JaguarGary9 signing off. And as always, go Jags.